Welcome to The Future is Bright. This is our August episode, and we have a very special guest. We're shooting live at the 46th Annual National Conference here in Denver, Colorado. I'm with Ron Simmons, State Legislator of Texas, and Ron has some great information about the new legislation that's been recently passed in Texas and some great new projects he and his wife are working on, along with their son Daniel. So let's welcome you to the show, Ron. Thank you so much, Stefanie, for joining us.
It's great to be here. We just got out of legislative session in Texas. Our session is 140 days straight. So from January until the early part of June, it is every day, all day. And Texas is unique, and it's a citizens legislature. So you don't really make any money doing it. Mm-hmm. So it's not a job that you make money from. It's something that we all leave our families and our careers. We go to Austin for 140 days every other year to take care of the business of the 15th largest economy in the world. So it's really pretty fascinating.
That's serious business.
It is serious.
And that's a big job.
Business.
That's almost like you're editing a movie.
Yeah, or something. We have 27 million people in Texas. Yep. I represent about 200,000 of those people, as we have 150 state representatives, each representing somewhere around 200,000 people.
Now, you were, this past session, you were a freshman.
Actually, this is my second session. So
this is your second session?
Yeah, so I was a sophomore. I've got past my freshman stuff. So.
But I understand, a rumor has it, that as a freshman legislator, you implemented something called Purple Tie Thursday?
That's interesting that you say that. Yeah. One of the things that I noticed, now I'm a conservative. I'm a Ronald Reagan conservative. Sure. I can say that because when I was 20 years old, I voted my first presidential election in 1980, and that was Ronald Reagan. So that really shaped the way I looked at the political world and the opportunity of America and what have you. And so what I realized in following President Reagan and others, on both sides of the political aisle, is that the only way you advance things for the better of America or the better of Texas, if you figure out how to work together. You could have different opinions on certain policies, but how can we get together? So what I did is red usually denotes Republicans, blue usually denotes Democrats.
Sure.
So when you put red and blue together, that makes purple.
Okay.
And so I implemented something as a freshman called Purple Thursdays. And it's a little bit slow to get started, but my colleagues in my freshman class jumped in with me, and we would wear a purple tie, or the ladies would wear a purple dress or a purple scarf on Thursdays. And the idea was to show that while we can differ on certain policies, we can come together as people for the betterment of Texas. So, by the end of that session, the entire legislature was observing Purple Thursday.
Really? So really bipartisan efforts, hopefully more than just on Thursdays.
Yes, that's right. Okay. Just reminded us on Thursday.
Okay.
That's right.
And do you still carry that out?
I still do, yeah.
Good.
I still do. Some people do, some people don't, but I still do, to remind people. And it got some national attention because it was something that was pretty unique.
So now, while you've been in this past session, you implemented, it seems like quite a few pieces of very positive legislation for the autism community. I think the first one that you mentioned to me was something about early diagnosis. Can you expand on that?
One of the things that I learned from being a part of the Autism Society and our son Daniel, who's now 30,
sure.
When he was young, my wife, who was a teacher and just like a lot of moms are, very intuitive, she knew there was something different with Daniel. But 30 years ago, being able to get a diagnosis and pinpoint that was very, very difficult. But she knew she knew enough that we need to be doing something. So we did get him involved early in different types of treatment programs and things like that. Even then we didn't know what the overall diagnosis was. We were treating the symptoms of it. But what we learned is that most insurance companies, at least in Texas and a lot of states, would not cover the diagnostic testing to determine if a child was on the autism spectrum or not. Texas wouldn't even consider anything until they were older than 3 years old. So what we know is that 18 months, we can figure that out.
So is it an accurate statement now that Texas, I think starting, I guess it would be September of this year, will have a piece of legislation that very clearly states that private insurance companies must actually cover the cost of diagnosis?
In fact, that went into 2 years ago.
So for 2 years we've had this legislation.
And it required everyone that has a medical plan in Texas that they offer that type of coverage, just like they might test.
That's vital.
other types of things. And it's non-invasive, it's inexpensive to do.
Okay.
But so we know that early diagnosis makes all the difference in the world.
Early diagnosis and then and intervention and
allowing them to
treatment
get into
as
some type
much.
of treatment program. That's
Absolutely.
correct.
So then beyond that, now that folks know in Texas that they've got this diagnosis portion covered, talk about the legislation that you helped to pass that pays for treatment and gets rid of the old cutoff of age 10.
Right. Yeah.
Because that was a big deal.
Yeah. One of the other things in the Texas law, and in some other states as well, was that you would cover treatment from like age 3 to age 10. But after age 10, there was no more coverage, insurance coverage for different types of treatment that we know work. And so, but we also know about people that are autistic, they don't grow out of it per se, right?
Exactly. It doesn't
It's
end.
something that they have to continue to work with for if the majority, if not all, of their lives. So we were able to pass legislation with the help of my friend, State Representative Larry Gonzalez, because he has a child on the spectrum as well,
Yep.
that took away the age limit. So that now, no matter what your age is in Texas, you can get treatment you can get Autism Services treatment.
See, now that is leaps and bounds beyond
Yeah.
some of the legislation that exists in other states. So maybe people will follow suit now and follow Texas's example.
Yeah. In fact,
That's
Georgia
huge.
just did this last time.
Well, and we're
excited
talking about that. And with Texas being such a large state, that's a big statement to make throughout the U.S. and a big change for the autism community because, like you said, you don't just grow out of it at age
No, you
10. You
don't.
need help for all of those years. And
Right.
part of, I think, what the Autism Society of America tries to do is to help people live with dignity into adulthood and beyond without worrying about that proverbial cliff that people talk about so
there's no
much.
question. And you know, we had an economist do some studies, Stephanie. It's really very interesting. Is that first of all, the cost of adding this type of coverage for insurance was like less than a nickel a month for a premium. So it was not a
So
big issue, right?
Insignificant.
But the overall cost to the state that they would save if we could get someone diagnosed, treated appropriately throughout their life and young life, then they have a chance of being a more productive citizen and therefore do not become a ward of the state.
Which
It
is
was
excellent.
millions of dollars per person if they could become employed and live on their own as opposed to having to be a ward of the state. So
Right.
it's really, and even
Good
though
for
a lot of
everyone.
people wouldn't see this as a conservative thing to do,
Yep.
it was a very conservative thing to do.
Fiscally responsible, it sounds
Absolutely.
like. Okay. Well, even more fascinating, I love the part about saving everyone money and giving coverage, but you helped to pass some legislation that really protects people with autism against in some instances, what are now considered hate crimes.
Right.
And I think that you also, if I'm not misstating what you said to me, that you helped to get that legislation passed that now includes the definition of autism within the definition of a disabled person.
That's correct.
So that
yeah.
in the event that some type of crime is committed against a person with autism, what would happen in the state of Texas?
In the state of Texas, that person could be tried under our hate crimes rule, which significantly increases the penalties. And it really, as I explained to you earlier, it came to me after reading an article in a newspaper about a situation in Ohio. So it wasn't even in Texas, but it was when we were all doing the Ice Bucket Challenge for ALS last summer.
Sure.
And this autistic boy had some classmates that came to him and said, hey, let's do this. So he was excited. People with autism, they want to make friends so bad.
Right.
It's very difficult for them.
Sure.
So they took him outside, had the bucket, but instead of ice and water, Stephanie, they poured urine and feces over him.
Oh, that's inexcusable.
And I cut that article out and I told my staff, we will file a bill in Texas that will make, if this happens in Texas, that the crime is going to be treated as a hate crime. And so we passed it bipartisan, the governor signed it, and so it's law in Texas, or will be September 1 of this year.
That's really something to be proud of.
Thank you very much.
So you are protecting our individuals
We're doing our
out there
best,
and
that's right.
who maybe necessarily can't protect themselves. And was there other legislation that you're now working on?
One
that's a
other
hot
thing we
issue?
did this time, there's always new stuff to do. One thing we did this time is a lot of times kids that are in school that have autism, they have other challenges as well. Because my son had trouble with motor skills, and all, so he
Sure.
couldn't participate in the normal types of physical activity they might in a physical ed class. So we had a law passed that some adaptive physical education would be allowed for people with autism. So if they were already maybe doing horse therapy or something like that,
Okay.
that could go for their PE credit, which was that was a plus for
So
people.
that's fantastic because you no longer have to fit into this sort of cookie
Right,
cutter definition
right.
of physical education
Like my
in order
son
to
could have
get
never
through.
played kickball because there's no way he could get his foot to hit that ball when it was moving.
But
you
at
know?
least now if
But he
he's-
could do other things, right?
Sure.
That's
And
right.
so it's good that you're helping to expand the definitions that allow people on the spectrum to be included within the school system for the activities that
Right.
they are at least capable of doing and are learning to do.